Okay, we'll get going here. Everyone, I'm going to stand here, approximately, if that's okay for everyone. Um, uh, what we're going to be just covering first here is a basic foundation of terminology. Really, what is BIM? I think we hear it as being this acronym out there. It's not always understood what it truly is. BIM is an interesting thing because it's building information modeling. And it's a borrowed concept. It's been in the aeronautical industry and shipbuilding for the last 30 years. You have, of course, early adopters were like the Frank Garys of the world. They were using software that was coming from France. Um, Dassault Systems was making the software that allowed them to do some of the early wild forms that they were doing. But it was building information modeling. And it's funny that we're just now catching up. Our industry is. Granted, buildings they're a little bit different than cars or ships. We're not repeating the process over and over and over and making the same fender. Every building's a one-off, so it's a little harder. Maybe that's why. Maybe we're just slow, um, and stuck in our ways. But the interesting thing about BIM really is the notion of a connectedness with real-world objects, representations. Of course, they're no longer two-dimensional. They're not flat. They're three-dimensional, and they have a real-world size, shape, representation. Um, Certainly makes it easier to visualize, but it also helps us prototype the entire building once before we actually have to go out there and build it, right? That's one nice thing. Secondly, is it's carrying a lot of data with it. It's the uniting of 3D representation and of a representation in the computer, but then also carrying all the data side with it, a database. That's really what's happening under the hood of Revit. When you're doing those schedules, you're just extracting data. And that's the neat thing about, in your case, lighting fixtures. They're going to have lighting fixtures populating a model, but they carry data with them. What their type mark is, who the manufacturers, their cost, all of those things. And you can choose to extract that data at any point in time and in any way, shape, or form. It's phenomenal. And the computer, and the other interesting thing about BIM is that it is, in the case of Revit, a single model compared to AutoCAD, where we're externally referencing many models together, if you want to call them models. And it wasn't a single concept. You couldn't count all of your lighting fixtures at one time, generally in a project, because you'd have to open up every XREF, count the blocks, or however you were doing, or manually count it, which obviously we're all human and can make some mistakes. At least other people can. No, but the interesting thing about this uniting of the database and the 3D world and real world and representations of real world objects is that it does really appear to be the next step, and it is finally the building industries catching up with these other industries. I find that kind of fascinating. But the other thing that Revit is, so it's not only a building information modeler, and it functions on the premise of being parametric. And parametricism is a term that basically says geometry, two-dimensional or three-dimensional, can be controlled by numerical inputs. And we are starting to see that with dynamic blocks in AutoCAD. You're seeing the fact that you can take one block and you can make it grow or shrink and represent a variety of things. Revit really is all about that. Revit says, okay, we're going to have a recessed fixture, can light. Why not use the same geometry, but through a series of numerical inputs, control that size, shape, physical reality of that object? There's no good reason not to. So that's parametricism. Parametricism also comes into play when you can relationships are built in the computer. So relationships between, say, a lighting fixture and a ceiling. If that ceiling goes up and down, that lighting fixture should stay with it. So there's these premises of relationship. It can come to things like if you array things out. You know, if you want 20 of them, we can get the computer to actually maintain a relationship. You can click on an array at a different time and say, oh, I want it to be 22, I want it to be 23, or respace that array. So it's this idea that you can control geometry through numerical inputs as well. In a schedule, you can change something that's in the model. Let's say you want to change a type of fixture in a given room. You don't have to go find it in the model. You can do it through a schedule if you can find it there. So it's nice. They call that a bidirectional connection between the schedules and then the actual geometries that are representing the model. So that's parametricism. And both BIM and parametrics, they're old concepts just finally making their way to us. And it's interesting. So it's a single model, of course, right? Revit is just one single model. The interesting thing about Revit is that you can slice up and look at that model as many times as you'd like to and in as many different ways as you would like to. I mean, Revit's really in the single model concept. That's why you can count all your light fixtures at one time. It's all one file. It's large, but with our computing power that we're getting on the average desktop, you can actually handle a decent sized model. You can take that single model, and if it's a prototype, if it's a real representation of the real world object, we want to look at it different ways, right? We want to make plan cuts, we want to make section cuts, all of those things. In Revit, you can do that. You can do it as many different ways as you want to. Those of you who have been through the process before, maybe a floor plan. You want a floor plan maybe to sometimes represent itself different ways. In the case of, say, architecture, you'll want a furniture plan maybe. But you don't always want to see the furniture in every plan, right? But the furniture needs to be in the model. So the concept is yes, you can cut it up a variety of ways, but you're going to filter out model categories that you don't want to see. So in the case of, say, an architectural plan that does not want the furniture, you just tell that view, that slice of the prototype of the building, say, I don't want to see furniture in this view. That's really the concept behind it. As when you really see a big model coming together, oftentimes you don't want to see all the MEP items or things like that. So you have to filter those views to say, you are part of the prototype, but I just don't want to see that at this point in time. So, yeah, especially the idea of clash detection, things like that are up and coming. I still have yet to use that as a major piece of a project, beyond looking for structural components, hitting things like pipes, things to a much lesser degree lighting fixtures. But we should start thinking about some of your lighting families have that in, and that's a nice thing too about building the prototype first, right? In computers, you can test this and see, okay, what are we running into? Hopefully, anticipate those other issues. But AutoCAD and I always like to start off with, let's talk about AutoCAD similes. What are some of the similar things that we're going to be running into? Well, first and foremost is our families. Families are to Revit as blocks are to AutoCAD, but they are 100 times more useful, and they have a lot more that's happening. So a family, you may have a lighting fixture family of some sort. Let's just say a linear pendant. And as I was saying, it's parametric. It may be able to grow and shrink. It may be a 4-foot long section, maybe 8, maybe 16. And it may be the same geometry that's being driven by a numerical input, but it's going to carry a lot of data with it. Generally, that's all housed within that one lighting fixture family. So it's nice. So rather than it just being a block that you bring in and a 2D representation of that, it carries a lot of things with it. Nice thing about families is they're external to your project, meaning that you define them initially, but it's almost like they're an external reference of sorts, in that if you want to control it from a standardization standpoint, and I'm going to try to talk about standardization a lot in this. In standardizing things for your offices, you may start to find that you have a general body of fixtures that are standard for most of the projects that you're doing. Just a starting point. And you can, with every new Revit file that's started, you can have those families, their definitions linked back to some server location. We control all of this. At any point in time, those can be updated in a project. Or maybe you find in a project, if you have administrative rights, that we need to update this and change this and distribute it to all of the projects. We can do that. So a family is like a block, but it's not like imported. You know how you can redefine a block within a file? Or you can re-import that block and it redefines it. Like if you define the block another way and you re-import it, you can overwrite that definition in an AutoCAD file. Same kind of thing happening here.
So if you're sending out a drawing or
Yeah.
a model,
Yep.
will those families still live in that model, or do you need to send those
Absolutely.
families with it?
No, that's the greatest thing. So every Revit file, when it starts with a template, all the families that are in it are actually contained. They're native at that point, and it's their own version of that. So you may have linear pendants hanging out there on your server that are your standard, but then the linear pendant may be the same name and everything. It's defined in that project right then and there. It's native to that project. Yeah, it's not like you have to bind all the families in and then send it out. That's one good thing about your template here is it is containing, majority of the generic fixtures that you'll utilize as your starting points for every project. And it's really carrying a lot of that basic lighting family data that you'll be needing to use. It's containing a lot of different things, your schedules, all of those things. It's that single model concept that it's all packaged into one place. But that's a really good point. Thanks for pointing that out.
So to go back to that, so is there a setting that you can say that it either needs to link our quote unquote master families or to be in?
Happens automatically.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, it happens automatically. And it's something we'll have to build. We'll have to figure out where we want these individual kind of the defining versions of your fixtures to reside. We may just say that they reside in the template every time someone starts a new one. We'll get into that. You can tell a lighting fixture family to update itself from another location, even another project. Maybe someone found a way they redefined a certain lighting fixture family and you want to now use that in your project. You can transfer that over. Overwrite your current version. Yeah. So it's pretty nice. But that's the whole idea is that from the AutoCAD simile standpoint, families are probably the closest thing to a block. In Revit, you are going to be doing things. I'm actually going to turn to a session of Revit here just so I can start to demonstrate some of the tools, if that would be helpful. Just quick show of hands on like who's been in Revit, who's done a Revit project. Just to start there, Revit project. Okay, cool. So 3 of 5. That's great. So for some of you, this may be your first time seeing the interface or actually opening it up. So that's good. Let's actually
have just a quick on that respect though. There were significant changes in terms of the user interface between MEP 2011 to MEP 2012. Is that right?
One more back, 2010.
Oh, okay, that's where the big change should be. So even because
Yeah.
I will say that one of the things I have not done yet is jumped into MEP 2012.
Cool.
And whether or not that made any big.
No, sadly,
change.
you want them making the improvements in real places of actual importance, and instead, they gave you one extra icon to set the view that it always opens on.
Fair.
Yeah, nothing else.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, the one big improvement is their attempt at cloud computing and how to handle geographical distances. That's actually coming in 2012. That's in here. I don't know enough about it yet, and I'm going to try to hopefully learn some more through you all, because I think that may be a good way to go. Other improvements were relatively small. But so if you open up a session of Revit 2012, you get this nice splash screen. I think this is a good thing that we're seeing with a lot of softwares, be it Adobe, anybody who's really, Microsoft is actually surprisingly the one who's pushing software makers to go this direction. Same with ribbons. That, has anyone noticed, the Microsoft Office, I don't know about everyone else. It took me a little while to get used to that. I was not accustomed to it. Didn't like it at first, but now I'm not so bothered by it. Same thing happened with Revit. 2010, it switched over. It used to be an icon-based tool set like AutoCAD. Did you use the older version?
I started dabbling with it when it had kind of the icon set. And you're right, it is a big change to then go to the ribbon format.
Yeah.
But getting used to it now more and more.
Yeah, likewise. I actually really now prefer it. I mean, it's not too bad. But okay, so here we are. Splash screen. This is nice. It's going to show you all of your past projects that you've done. Not all of them. I think it keeps a cache of 2 or 3. Depends. You can actually set that. But big thing here is the template that you start a project from. We're going to have it set up that you always start up the HLB template. We don't have that in place right now because we'll need to migrate around and actually set that up on each workstation. But you can tell it automatically which template to start from. You do that by going to the R icon. And I have this nifty little, can everyone see that when I click?
Yeah, the bubble.
Little bubble. R pull down, new, and when I say fly out, I'm going to hang the new icon. There's a little arrow that is on the right there. We're going to hit new project. The pop-up window is asking you for which template you're going to use. You won't have to go through this all the time. Normally, you can just go to the R pull down, hit new. It will automatically fire up the right template. But for right now, we need to go in and browse for our template. This is on the R drive.
Within the R drive, Revit, there's a Revit folder on that.
Thank you. Revit training files and HLB template 2012. Okay, here's one thing. Always you want to know what version of Revit your architect is working in. You cannot say backward in Revit. So presumably everyone is on subscription. Software ownership doesn't make sense
So what
otherwise.
would we do if they're in like 2011 or 2000?
You have to work in an older version.
We carry, but if they have 2011, well, then they wouldn't be able to see our stuff.
We
Right.
can use theirs. if they-
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to.
Correct.
I don't know how long we'll carry licenses, but I know that we carry both 2011 and 2012 currently. That'd be, how
So
long are
my
we planning
question-
on carrying the older versions of Revit?
Well, the licensing's there, so I mean,
Okay.
and I believe it goes back 3 versions. I think it supports 3 versions of the licensing service.
Yes.
So
That's what we'll.
I missed the first part of the question.
In essence, we were just talking about if for some reason a client hasn't updated to 2012.
Right, if they're in 2010 or 2011, and since we can't say backward, call you and say, hi, we're working on a project from 2010.
If you need me to
get it
install an older version, we can absolutely do it, and the licensing's there. It's the same licensing pool regardless of the version. The license is applied to all previous versions to Revit. So we now have 7. Did I mention that to you guys? Did we got 2 more? So we have 7 licenses, which moving forward would be great. 7 network licenses for the firm.
Oh, wow.
It's the MVP suite, so we have AutoCAD MVP as well, which we haven't really talked about. But
I don't know if anyone is.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that's for another day. But yeah, it will cover previous versions, so that's not going to be a problem.
Great. Okay, well, that's good to know. The reason I've named your template 2012 is so you know which template you're starting up with. It is not common anymore to not having an architect who's working in a more current version. Watch this on your contract. Just so you know, it can potentially be a hassle. One thing is that your current template, I have it was initially created in 2011, so I have a version of it at about the 80% mark of what your full 2012 is in. So worst case scenario, if we do have to start a project in 2011, we have something for you to at least begin it with. That's the thing. You want to probably bring up a template every time there's a new, when Revit 2013 comes out, save a new version of this and just archive off your template. Okay, but everyone found this template? I'm going to hit open. Hit OK. This fires up. Okay, so from a standardization standpoint, Revit is a phenomenal tool because you can control so many things from the initial template that it starts on. And at any point in time, if you have a newer version, or maybe you brought a project up to a certain point that now you want to transfer those standards, even maybe back into the template, you can. You can easily transfer those project standards. So this is a splash screen, probably the place that you want to open up every, this will happen automatically when you start a project. This is what will open. And you've seen probably a lot of firms do this. I opened up your Hyundai America headquarters. Gensler had a much larger version of this, somewhat like your processes, what we'll talk about. I generally like to split my monitor, rather split my palettes. There's only really two major palettes. We have something over here called the project browser. That's the central nervous system of your entire project. Okay? This is where everything is housed. Be it all those slices of the model that we're talking about, plan, section, elevation, all of those things. And then down to all of your schedule types, all of those things. It's your sheets, so your whole sheet set is in there. Anybody using Sheet Set Manager in AutoCAD? Those things? Okay. Basically, all of those previous things that were done in AutoCAD, they're all represented in this one thing, which is good.
How you got that?
Oh, what's that?
How did you get that that bar?
Oh, you know what? You have properties.
Your right hand side like that.
Oh yeah, so that's me. Okay. You want to go to View, if everyone doesn't have this. And those are managed. If you happen to accidentally close these, View to the far right is User Interface. And there's some checked boxes here. You want to check Project Browser and Properties. Those are the two ones that you'll want to have open. Did that come up?
Also, other silly question: is there any way to get?
Sure. Bring them forward and make those gray. Sure.
Since you're missing certain letters because they're both black.
Yeah. Right.
Oton Lee.
Yeah.
Broad
Sure.
We make the HLB, I think, kind of grade.
We could grade that. Sure.
Yeah, I think that's.
Actually, it is a good opportunity to just see what's happening here. So this is actually something that's called a detail component, and it just is a simple little like label that can be used throughout the project on your title blocks, things like that. It has a certain size, so it is awfully large. But remember, I was talking about families being somewhat external. If you click on this HLB, and let's just all run through it. So this will be good. If you click on that, it all kind of acts like one object. That's because it is really one object. If you ever want to go access that external family and go see what's going on under the hood, hit Edit Family up in the upper ribbon, a little bit to the right. Edit Family. You would do this for lighting fixtures. You would do this for everything. Okay, now you should be able to access the text. Now, this is still one block.
I think because I gave you it as one.
It's fine. We'll exploit it down. This is a good thing because anytime you want to bring in AutoCAD data, there's a certain process that you'll want to go through. It's a purging process, a cleaning process. You want to do,
I have them as separate files if you need.
oh, no, this
And
is
also,
fine.
can you, so the way that we manipulated, for instance, the color, like we had the gray and black and then the green and the black, was by layers. Is that the same kind of thing here? Or we put them in different layers and then made that layer a certain color?
Yeah, you could certainly still get to things that way. It's not really as critical. It's probably going to be done more in text types. And I haven't exploded this yet, but there's an explode button up here. We're going to do a full explode. And let's see. It handles CAD data very, very well. The one thing you need to be careful about is that it can pollute a drawing, it can pollute a Revit model. So always try to do any AutoCAD exploding externally, like in a Revit family. Don't ever bring CAD data or import CAD data directly in. We'll actually go through that process of linking rather than importing. So it's neat. When you click on some of that exploded geometry, you actually see that what comes up is on the properties bar. And this is going to be inherent all the way through Revit, whether we're in the project. When you select an object, its properties will come up. In this case, it's a detail item. Two types of parameters. We're going to talk about instance parameters and type parameters. Just roll with me on this. We're going to hit Edit Type. Edit Type after you selected one of the pieces of geometry. In this case, I'm going to do the small letters. And I hit Edit Type, which was in the properties. And we're going to change the color there. We're going to change that color from black to, let's just do a lighter gray. We have to hit OK twice to get out. Does anyone do any website creation? CSS or anything like that? It's like styles. It's all governed by styles. So I knew that whole line of text was the same style just because it was created probably in AutoCAD, something like that. Check this out. Hit Load into Project. Okay, look what pops up. It's asking us, it's saying, hey, you're trying to load something that's already in here, in this template, or in my file. Do you want to overwrite the version? Or do you just want to overwrite some of its parameter values? Rarely do you do the second option. You normally want to do the upper one, which click on that, overwrite the existing version. There we go.
And in doing that, we haven't changed the
template.
original that you had done. We would have to go back to the screen that we were just at and actually save.
You are exactly correct. One thing we're going to do, hit Control and Tab. That cycles you through any windows that are open. Okay, here we are. I'm going to go back to that family that we had open. One thing that you have to remember in Revit is that once you open a view or you open something, it stays open, for better or for worse. So you have to go back and you have to close this, otherwise it remains open. And hit X. It says, do you want to save changes to your HLB logo? Just for the fun of it, hit yes. It's going to prompt us where we want to save that. In this case, I will save it to our Revit Training location. Actually, maybe I'll just save one version. When you're saving a family, down here, Control, where I'm seeing Options, this is where you control the number of backups. Okay? All those types of things for that file. Revit's going to automatically save a series of backups for every file, be it a project or a family. Here we're saying, I normally just do one. So watch this really fast. Okay. Everyone's back in the project. No need to save yours to that same location. We're going to redefine yours.
I just had a quick question. When you make that change from like 3 to 1 or whatever, is that specific to this computer and it handles all projects, or is that just specific to that file?
To that file. To that file that we just saved.
Okay.
Yep. Go back to your projects and hit undo a few times. Go back to the original all black versions. Do a few Control Z's. Okay. I'm going to show you how you redefine. We're going to redefine your version of this through the one that I've saved. Okay. So in this central nervous system, the project browser, we have families actually are shown here. They're represented. Every block that's in the project, all the content is actually also housed within the project browser. Okay, so here we are. We see a bunch of model categories. That's really what it comes down to. Revit is, as we cut up that model, we need to sort it. You know, what is a piece of furniture? It's representing a real world object. You have to call it furniture. There are model categories for everything. Structural columns, you know, ductwork, all different kinds of lighting fixtures, lighting devices, fire alarms. They have their own category. And it's funny when you start to chop up the built world in this way, you realize just how simple it really is. It's really not that complex. You know, 20 or so model categories, and you have most of most of everything covered. Where we're concerned, and we're going to look, is detail items. Right there, I want to expand detail items. I'm using a little plus and minus box next to it. I expanded detail items, and look at that HLB logo detail component. See that? I want you to right-click on that, the heading for HLB logo detail component, and look at reload. Hit reload. It will prompt you for a location. Go browse to that location on the hard drive in our training files. And then you should be able to load it in. There's your updated version. When you're using lighting fixtures and you're doing lighting fixtures, it won't differ at all. Exact same process. That's the nice thing about Revit is it's consistent. The tool is just so consistent. It works how we think as designers and how we want to document, but it's just so consistent across the board. Every task is done the same way, which is nice, right? Consistency is certainly makes life easier. So, well, I don't know if this is the right gray. We can reverse this, or however it needs to happen for to match your standard.
Well, I think it's nice too. We can add color. We can.
Absolutely.
I think we can make this, look.
Yes.
Because it is.
Be consistent.
We do.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that we've talked about on our calls is a lot of our templates and title blocks and whatever it may be look very old. They're not. They don't have kind of that flash of what we consider to be our firm, being that upper tier, and I think that adding that color or adding something unique to it, I think helps.
Yeah.
And so especially because this is what clients see for projects. When we send it to them, this should be the welcoming screen.
Yep.
So, it's certainly something for us to think about how we want it.
I would agree. I think sometimes, like the Gensler project, when we open up the Hyundai America, there's, some choose to do really large screens. Their welcome screens. Others do just, and that, you embellish it. It can just be simply project name.
It's a great day at HLD.
What's this?
It's a great day at HLD.
Yeah.
Only how we answer
I'm sorry.
One of the things I just wanted to bring up, which I don't know that you're aware of, is that we have a Revit team, as you are very much aware of. We also have several other teams that are getting quickly into motion. One of which is our sort of InDesign team.
Oh, wow.
But InDesign really meaning all of the Adobe suite, so Photoshop, Illustrator, so on and so forth. So as soon as I heard template design that clicked in, and I think that I know that one of our other groups is asking for the InDesign group to help them build templates, look and feel, a little bit more panache as opposed to a little bit, bland. And I think there's an opportunity there for some collaboration with the InDesign teams to do some art. Maybe I don't necessarily think artistic things, but just using those tools.
And we have given Peter updated tenor blocks.
Sure.
Different, much different. Not
Yeah.
much, but much nicer, I think, at least,
Well-
than our old tenor blocks. They definitely could use probably still some tweaking, but I think it's a huge step forward.
I thought they
Well,
were
I
great.
think
Yeah.
that, Stacy, you had mentioned that you're on the InDesign team, or that type of
So I
team.
think it's
So, I mean, I think that helps bridge the two, because
and I
we
also
do
know
want
that
consistency.
Impact, there's a logo discussion going on as well.
right, and Lindsay is part of the AV3 group, which is asking InDesign to do the AGI, the InDesign, the templates for InDesign calculations.
So in essence, they'll take care of it.
Well, I'm just saying it's something that we can go to them because they are going to be focusing on those programs.
Yes.
And if they don't already have the answers, like you said earlier, if they don't already have the answers, that would be a
Right.
good team to go get those answers about making things look and feel better.
Sure.
So, but I think maybe perhaps if we give them our templates and
Where we
kind
are.
of start.
Yeah.
And then go from there. And I do know that there's a larger discussion with the logo.
Started with the InDesign's request for
Really?
which then brought it back here.
Oh, because my first request for a vectorized
Oh,
logo
but
came from,
vectorized.
came from Peter.
Yeah.
And we actually, right before it came from Peter, it actually came from the two of us working on a title block and wanting to add. How do we do that?
That's like
Um,
where I started.
Which opened up a whole. So we do now have one, which I gave to Peter, and I can give, but it does not have the haze effect.
Yeah.
Bunch of them.
That was your
This
first
little
que-
bunch of
That was
dots.
your first
Yeah.
question. You were like, "How did you do the haze?" And I was like, "You didn't." That's how I did it. I didn't do it.
I just was thinking either they spent a lot of time, clicking a lot.
Yeah, no, we did not do it. We didn't even think about attempting it.
Smart. Oh.
So,
But no, this is
Right.
cool. I think we see this a lot. Like the need for consistent branding, and you want the same thing coming out the doors, looking the same once it hits the street.
I agree. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to overhaul.
Yeah, we definitely agree. That's the nice thing about this being an external object too. Someone can work on it there, and then you can populate projects with it if you want to quickly update.
And can I ask, in this case, with the 4 offices, with something that you could change it this easily, are we going to have this template live in a central to the 4 offices, or are we going to have templates live on individual servers, and then if I make a change, for instance, to it, it's only changed the Boston template, and then a year from now, my template looks significantly different than your template, or
I have a feeling Mike
Nice
might come.
template.
He might come running back in here, but I know that my dream is is that
Can you
I.
sit over here?
I'm working on something in there.
there's a chair in
Yeah, I
there.
know.
Like,
I will come and join you guys. Yeah.
What I'd love to see, which I think we've talked about from an IT perspective, is certainly with regards to templates, energy codes, certain things like that, lead reference guides,
Central reference.
having
line.
a
Yes.
central place. So
agreed.
that would be my hope. Right now,
That's
we're not
my,
there.
my fear is that
You start with
exactly
something like
that's my fear. Is that a year from now, Boston's template's gonna look different than New York's. All gonna go, oh, you know what? I wish we could just tweak this a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, by that 4 years from now.
Yeah.
And it's gone. We're completely different.
I mean,
again.
yeah, I think that we as a team need to try and keep control as much as possible as other people's hands start touching it, so that we need to try and stay aware of keeping it consistent. But hopefully we get to
Capitalize his time. Should we write down these topics that we can talk at dinner about, so that we're not deferring.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, but
It's a good idea. Just to maybe close that thought up, this idea of standardization, something you can revisit every year. If all the firms have their own version of a template sitting out there, there's no reason you can't reconvene at the end of every year and make a conforming template and start the whole process over again. Or every time a new project is started, it's out of your hands to some degree, because that whole project is independent of the template. Yes, those families are tied back to another location potentially, but it doesn't mean that someone couldn't make their own version of this logo within that project, just that one project, and it would never be saved back and overwriting the original one. So it's somewhat out of your hands with every project.
It's kind of tying back, opening up the original template. We need to update our families with every version.
No.
Get moved with the updated template.
I'm just wondering, can we?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Forward migration is not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just can't go backwards.
No, and you know what's interesting? There's so much content that's been created out there. You'll go seek out maybe a lighting fixture. You'll load it in. You'll get a little pop-up window that says, "Oh, this file is being upgraded to your current version." Yeah. No, that's a really good question though. It's safe going forward.
Can
Yes.
I also ask, if we closed our program and reopened that template, would our logo look like this, or would it be the all black one? Did we just change the template, or did we just change our file?
Exactly right. You just changed your file.
Okay.
Yep. Great distinction, because and I guess that's the point about once you start a project with a template, it's kind of out of your hands.
Okay.
Yeah. If you could save it back to the template eventually.
But we haven't. What
You
we
haven't.
just did, we have not saved it back to.
You've only affected your one project.
Okay.
Yeah. That template's just that base starting point.
Right.
Yeah. But that great distinction. So in this project browser, this central nervous system of some of the inner workings of Revit, but then also just the basics of the way that your project is organized and operating, there are several things. And I try to collapse things down as much as I can. In that, I'll try to collapse as much as I can. A Revit project that gets large, especially, I'm sure Michael can attest to this, is so many views. The result, your project browser will be a mile long, and you just have to figure out ways to sort that. Already, your team learned how to do that with a sorting parameter on your views. Currently, you're being sorted by 3 different types of criteria. It is design, documentation, and export. Those definitions can be changed, but if we expand those, we see that there are several types of views that are actually sitting under each one. Because the biggest thing that we need to do in Revit is be careful that we don't move, say, a view, like, in AutoCAD, if you have a viewport set up for, on a sheet, you want to lock that viewport sometimes, you don't want it to move. Same issue here with views, because we can cut this model as many times as we want to. We may have 100 versions of level 1. You're just looking at it different ways. Maybe there are different cut planes. Maybe there are different model categories being filtered out. But in general, they're being used for different things. In Revit, what we try to do is we set up a series of documentation views. Those are the views that go onto a sheet. And we try to do as little messing with those as we can. When we're doing our day-to-day work in a model, we generally want to be doing it within the design views. That's your day-to-day work, as much as possible. And that's because the documentation views, it's so critical that those hold their parameters. We don't want them to grow and shrink or move or something to be changed in them. We also have an export version. May or may not be useful to you. You may find that this is just deleted out of most of your projects because you don't end up using it. That's if you're trying to share it with someone and export out a CAD file, maybe that's cleaned up. If we do a cleaned up floor plan. yet again, it's not ever ending up on a sheet.
So to circle back, the documentation is that's meant to be our final product that someone would see if they were, if we were issuing a sheet.
Yeah.
That's what they would see, you know, if they had a hard copy of the project.
Correct.
That would be.
But that doesn't live under sheets?
It does. It does. And we actually, if we expand sheets here, there you'll see that there's also several types of sheets that we can develop.
Okay, so I'm sorry. If we go into views, so design
Yep.
is what we do our day-to-day.
Day-to-day working, correct?
Documentation,
Yeah, that's the one that you're going to do. You'll do some tagging in there, but it is the one that you generally want to stay out of. That's the one that doesn't get touched.
Which one? Sorry.
Under anything under documentation. So in this case, that's the one that ends up on the sheet, that documentation view. And we can rename these headings, that they don't have to be design, documentation, and export. I noticed that many firms, I think you all have done this, initially you numbered 01, 02, for a variety of reasons. Design and documentation just seems to be a logical way of breaking it up.
so why, if we're creating a sheet, why don't we reference the design view?
Because you're going to find yourself in a design view sometimes just creating, say, a quick section so you can go find something in the model. You don't necessarily want that to show up everywhere. It's just it may be a section that you're using just to work in. It doesn't necessarily show up in your outputted views. You know, last thing you want is on the sheet when someone prints it out and be like, ooh, what are all these little section marks? That's really what it is. So it'll be in a design view working on a specific work set. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, that you will be making these sections. And so everyone can utilize Revit to the best of its ability to sit there and kind of look at the model different ways, not necessarily something that's outputted. So we're talking about those organizational parameters. Those are those organizational parameters: design, documentation, export. What defines that? If you click on one of the views, just single click, I'm going to go to this design floor plan level 1 architectural. In the properties bar, you see a lot of information that comes up about that view immediately without having opened it. You could double click on it and open it, but I'm just trying to prove you click on it, a single click in the project browser. You can go to the properties and you can start to go through those properties and see what's there. This is the parameter that is actually guiding how this is categorized. It's categorized as a design plan, and this is a rolling database, so you could make a variety of headings. Watch this. I'm going to type sketches. Hit apply. Look, so it changes. Change that to view usage. Come on. I think the apply. So I changed view usage. I wrote sketches, and it started out a new series of headings for me. Still have design, documentation, export, but I have a whole new grouping here because your browser is being sorted by that parameter. I'm going to go back to view usage, and I'm going to change that back to being a documentation plan, and it resorts. So the whole point here is that as your Revit files become thicker and larger and longer in the project browser, you need to sort frequently. and you need to come up with these methods of sorting. That's by far the easiest one. You know, you may end up doing a series of other view types. So that's just views, and that's a good point. I think Brandon was starting to allude to this. Is the process is making a view. You can slice up that model as many ways as you want to, as many plans, sections, elevations, 3D views as you'd like to see. Each view has its own set scale. It has its method of filtering the model, showing what it wants to show, and then it gets transported onto a sheet. Basically, it's a dragging process. Okay? So only at that point, and this will probably all become even that much clearer about the process of a documentation view going onto a documentation sheet and then outputting from there. But that's really, of your views, maybe 10% of them make it on the sheets. You know, I think that's a critical point. About 10% of the views you will make actually make it onto sheets. You can make unlimited cuts and views of that model. Okay, so we were talking a little bit about that sorting parameter, and we're going to go back to families just because there is an awful lot of content in here. Let's go to families, expand those, and expand lighting fixtures. You can see what's there. We've created a series of non-hosted lighting fixtures for you. The virtue of these non-hosted fixtures is that if you have a client who, for some reason, is in AutoCAD, you can still work in Revit. They don't require a ceiling or a wall. They're completely free. They're all going to have the prefix HLB on them because they are custom to you, and they're all fairly generic. You utilize these only as a starting point. Further down, though, we have hosted fixtures. And I would love some feedback on this breakdown. Maybe we can, you know, as a later discussion, it's really two groups: HLB fixtures, which are non-hosted, and then the rest are all hosted fixtures. A hosted fixture is going to look for a ceiling or a wall or a floor to attach itself to. Okay? Building up that parametric relationship. It's meant to be attached to something. It's looking for a home. That's what all the hosted fixtures will do. And we're going to use those at varying points in time. Okay? Options bar, properties bar. We're going to skip over. Actually, let's do that quickly. I'm thinking type and instance properties. We'll go ahead and use those. Let's double click on one of our views and open that up. Let's open up level 1 RCP in the design category. Okay, blank. A few different things that we have. First, at the bottom of the screen, in that viewport, we have a scale, right? So we have a scale. We have other things like detail level. And this is an interesting thing because we have different detail levels. Coarse, there's a medium, and then a fine. And that's the amount of detail, more so on the architectural side you have to worry about this, but think about it from, say, a plan cut through a wall. Maybe it's a very complex wall assembly. Let's say a brick wall. At coarse, you aren't going to see very much information. It'll just be an inside line and an outside line. That's it. At medium, maybe you see some of the inner layers. Maybe you see the lines representing brick, and then maybe there's some stud work in there, but you don't see much more. But maybe at fine, you actually start to see insulation and hatching on the bricks, and you get a lot more information. So that's Revit's way of keeping the model working quickly, is the detail level that it's trying to show. Keep that in mind. When you are having to navigate an architectural model, watch out for the detail level that's being asked for. Because oftentimes that can slow a project down if you're asking for fine detail and you don't really need it. You're out there at 16th scale and, or 8th, and you just don't really require it. So be cautious of that. There are, next to that, to the right, we have our graphic display options. I think these are fairly common to any 3D program. Wireframe, hide line. If you want to write down some quick keyboard shortcuts, we'll go through these too. Wireframe, if you need to go to wireframe, is WF. Hidden line is HL. Shaded is SD. Those are the two I find myself using the most. Wireframe, WF. Hidden line, HL. And then shaded, SD. I use those commonly. We keep going to our right. We have sun settings. Probably won't use this quite as much. We go furthermore. One more right. And that is the shadows. On, shadows off. We probably won't be using that as much. But the next two are the crop regions. So every viewport has this ability to crop itself down. And you can adjust that crop region. By default, a view in Revit goes to the fullest extent. So it's always going to the extent. But you can say, hey, show me the crop region. So let's actually click on both of those items. I did a ZE for zoom extents. In Revit, you don't need to use the space bar. It's just always going to be 2 letters, and that's it. And it will do the command. So ZE is zoom extents. ZR is zoom region. So this is the crop region showing up. If you select it, you can actually pull it in and out on very, very large models. We'll utilize this frequently. The crop region is critical for a very, very large building to figure out, okay, how are we going to actually document this thing and get it onto sensible sheets, you know? Okay, we have going back to the bottom of the screen, we have the nifty little pair of sunglasses. Anyone use this yet? Temporary hide isolate. Yeah, really, really helpful tool. We'll get into. And then to the right of that is light bulb for the what I'm going to call permanent hide isolate. Okay, so sunglasses, temporary hide isolate, and the light bulb is permanent. Difference between the sunglasses, you can select an object in Revit. Maybe you just want to temporarily get it out of your way. Okay, so you can see what you're working on. In Revit, you're going to find the screen gets cluttered, and you have trouble drilling down and finding what you want to select. You're going to use that frequently. The sunglasses are good because you can just filter down through, and you can say, don't just get this out of my way temporarily. You'll click on that after you've selected an object. You'll click on that, and there's several options that will pop up. There's isolate category, so you can either choose to isolate the object you've selected or to hide the object you've selected. Temporary, if you close this file and reopened it, it would restore. Okay, so your sunglasses are not permanent. However, the permanent hide isolate is the light bulb. There to the right, it's completely permanent. Once you've hidden something in that view, it stays off, and I'll show you how to use that.
What's the difference between isolate and hide?
So isolating, so let's say you click on a fixture in your plan, and you say isolate just that object. It will show you just that object, and everything else will go away.
Whereas hide will get rid of that object and show everything else.
You got it, yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's nice. Let's drag in a light fixture. Or, yeah, since we haven't gotten into ribbons just yet, let's drag in a light fixture. Let's just pick one of your HLBs. HLB, I'm going to do your linear box. Left click on one of those sizes, left click, hold down, and drag it into the drawing area. You know, I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do a ceiling pendant. Yeah, that one looks like it's still wanting to be hosted. Use the HLB ceiling pendant. I'm going to do your bowl version. Okay, so there's that fixture. It came in. Let's click on it. Okay. We get a few things that pop up. Everyone have a fixture in? Okay. Select it. Look at your properties bar after you've selected this fixture. You see things that are specific just to this one. Meaning, you know, let's say this pendant, you have 10 of them in a project. Maybe they're at different heights, right? Each one of these can have an instance parameter control of what height does it reside at. It's so, as opposed to, if we hit edit type, it's a kind of secondary level of control inside. If I change anything in a type property, it changes all of them. So let's say I have 10 of these fixtures. If I change an instance property, like mounting height, potentially, that's an instance. Whereas if I change lamping, that probably is a type parameter that will change all of those light fixtures in one shot. But it's nice. So there's two layers of properties. One more time. You get in there, you select an object, you have the instance properties immediately available. You hit edit type, and then you go into the type properties, which then control every single one. So for instance, a light fixture, to change its type mark, make it an F2. You would do it right down here. It's a type property. And here's type mark. For that matter, I'll just type F2. Hit apply. So for every bowl pendant moving forward of this type, it would always be an F2. That's a type parameter.
So one of the things I don't think we'll touch on now when we actually do documentation, but we would be interested in hearing is when we have the second bowl type, that's going to be a different tag, different size, landing, those type of things. You know, how would we
How do you handle that?
So that'll be, once we get into the documentation side of things, that'll be one.
Cool.
When you're using the same symbol for different types of instances.
Different things. Perfect. Yep. Exactly. The yeah.
Go ahead, you can finish. Is there, so let's say that this bowl, you know, is, and that's our F2. Will it show up in the project browser anywhere as the F2? Or how do I know, how does somebody else going into that project know that that's the F2?
Question. A lot of times you either name,
You rename
you
that.
make a copy and you rename it there. I noticed, I think you had done that for your fixtures on.
Well, that's one of
Clubhouse.
my other questions for the future is that for those projects, whenever I grabbed a fixture within our Revit, you know, with our project folder, I had a separate folder that was Revit, you know, for project-specific fixtures, and I named those types F2, and it had whatever manufacturer information.
Yeah.
So then when I loaded it into the project, it said F2. Whatever. So that was one of the questions for as we move forward with documentation on how to handle it. But
Yeah. Great instinct. So that's exactly it. Yeah, that's one of the biggest problems. Is, how do you start naming this? As it does become more specific in a project, you very well may rename the family. You can right-click on any one of these, and unfortunately, in this case, all of your ceiling pendants are all within the same family. so it's a little harder to call that an F2. You could right click on the bowl and you can hit rename.
But it would always be listed under ceiling pendants.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Is there a schedule that we could make that would list these are the fixture types and this is the restaurant, this is the family that it's referencing to?
Absolutely.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually happening in the background. The second that we inserted one light fixture, already that, what I call it a roving database. The thing is always tracking model categories and objects in a model. It's already going, which is neat. So that light fixture is being tracked by a schedule. Let's actually go check out one of these schedules and we'll see that it's showing up. Expand your schedules and quantities.
Is there an easy way to navigate through the browser? Like, because I just find when I was going through other projects that, like you said, it becomes 5 miles long. And is there an easy way to like expand or quickly move to one group or another?
Really wish there was.
Or
I
even
mean,
close all of them at once.
Yeah, I know.
Is there any sort of like keyboard command to like just go?
So you just have to do it and
all manual.
Okay.
All manual. I wish. I know those are the types of things I think that Autodesk is really going to have to address. You know. Yeah. No, I'm sorry, it's not done yet, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah. Click on your lighting fixture schedule. Yay! Remember that bidirectional control? You could change that lighting fixture type mark here, and it would change all of them. So that's a good point. If we want to add in that family and type, that's a very interesting thing. I'm going to show you actually how to control the data that's in this schedule. So we'll actually touch on that when we're doing the documentation side. Is how do we add a data field? Because all we're doing is we're asking Revit to that database to say, hey, let's extract one more piece of data out of the model and show it to me in this schedule.
Also, just quickly looking at the clock, we've got about 20 minutes.
Cool.
Still devoted to this section, just in case that controls any.
I think we're actually doing really well. We're on to, is everybody cool so far? Everyone understand it? It may not completely gel yet.
While we're in schedules, because this has come up just recently with other groups in the office, is there a way to zoom in on this view or like make this view bigger in the schedule? So once
That or she gets this close to
so-
our screen.
so once the text height is set, then that's what it is. Okay.
You can, it's really a real shame. I hope this is not an improvement that's coming. Is everybody have you ever heard that acronym WYSIWYG?
Yes.
What you see is what you get. This is not WYSIWYG. I would love to see what I was actually, not until you drag that schedule into a sheet do you really see how it's formatted. There are formatting controls. You can change the header, text size, and all those things. So it can be different, but it's really unfortunate
And
because
so we can't make this view any larger.
But if
There
you
will
were
be
to
a
put
certain
it,
person in this office who will.
but if we were to take it
can't
to a
get
sheet,
closer.
We could.
that sheet.
Then
shows it shows that is WYSIWYG.
So-
And it,
Okay, so
That's
just have to do that.
yeah.
That also gives me more optimism for being able to format our schedules.
yes,
Because I've only seen it like this.
yes.
Okay.
I was
that-
a little scared when I saw this.
Just keep your expectations fairly low. So, the formatting is not great. What it is giving you is the amazing amount of time saving.
Yeah, it
Yes.
is huge activity.
Yes.
I just worry about. I feel like one of the things that HLB gives is what we produce is beautiful
Yeah.
in every sense. From obviously the end product, building product, but also our presentations and everything. And so I at least feel that I also want my schedules. I mean,
Yeah,
they're
we may
as
not-
boring as they are. If they can be as also pretty as they could be, I understand Revit's limitations, but if we can, I guess,
Well, maybe we
stretch those limitations as much as we can.
maybe
Yeah.
we just have to export the data out of here and
Right.
do it.
So
our own.
however we go about doing it, I
Yeah.
at least find that
It brings
important.
up a topic that I'm curious about that I'm asked ahead of time actually is There are data management programs apparently that you can do offline, and they're optimized to link and filter information into
Oh, interesting.
It's for prettier.
I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it. One was DeRofus was developed by HOK
Wow.
on a project in Sweden or something. I have an architect who's using it on a project. And CodeCheck is such a weird name, but they've developed that software. They have,
I think it's code book,
yeah.
I think.
Not CodeCheck, CodeBook, right.
But
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. I haven't heard of either one. I know that they have opened up the hood a bit to third-party developers.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they need help. Yes, you could export this to Excel, and then you could link a table through AutoCAD to that Excel file, format it in AutoCAD to make it look nice, and then
We just make
I mean,
it
I don't
look
think-
nice in Excel.
I mean, yeah, because we're not typically issuing schedules on
True.
sheets.
Right.
We're typically doing it in, either 8.5.
Yeah,
To fit
absolutely.
into,
That's a
like,
good point.
spec book usually.
Absolutely, yeah. You can just export it right out into Excel, make it look very good there. That's a good point. You're not using it in the same way. Okay. Easy enough. Our pull down export schedule. Yeah. But this is nice. So that bidirectional control,
Sorry, counting too long.
I'm going to change it to an F7. Because I only had one of them in the project, it's not a problem. Control Tab. Another shortcut, you can have multiple windows open, remember? Hit WT. I have all my windows tiled at one time. I can work in multiple views. Anybody have two monitors going? This is nice because you can drag views over to your other monitor.
Where did you like W2?
WT. You can't do it from a schedule.
Yeah, mine did.
I know. Can't do that.
Control Tab, Robin, will get you over to a drawing view, and then you can.
What is their? I wonder why the reasoning is all these views open every time.
It's very strange because I've seen people before who will have 20 and 30, 20 views open. They don't realize that they have it open, but the computer's slowed significantly because it's monitoring, processing all of those views. It's refreshing. Basically, it's refreshing every view as a user is making changes.
Is there a button that you click?
Yes. Yeah. So off of your View tab, and we'll get into the ribbons a bit more. View, and you can hit Close Hidden Windows. If you're in one, if you've maximized one, you can close hidden. And that switch windows, that's the same thing as doing Control T, and tab, or Control Tab. Tabs you through all of your open windows.
And what's a WT?
Window tile. That's the thing that just showed you all of your open windows. Sure. That's a very, very helpful one. I like to use that often. If I'm doing a particular task that maybe requires me being in plan, section, and elevation all at once, it's nice having all the views open and cycling through. And
Is there a keyboard command to close all hidden?
no. Yep. But if anybody wants to, and I wouldn't worry about this. There was some talk about maybe standardizing this. I don't think it's as critical. Under View tab, User Interface, Keyboard Shortcuts, each and every user can have their own keyboard shortcut.
Can I make a keyboard shortcut to hide all windows?
Yep. It's always going to be 2 letters. I don't believe you can have numbers or symbols. It has to be just 2 letters. So when you do a command, you just do those 2 letters. You don't have to hit spacebar or anything. It just
I assume it tells you if it's already been taken.
correct. You actually see a list of available commands and then key assignments.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's just roll through really quickly. I'm going to not belabor this too much. Quick. I'm going to copy that light fixture only because I want to show you how changing the type mark affects it. Select that light fixture. We're going to type CO.
Sorry, before we move on, can you just explain, or if we're going to go over this later, what all this stuff is?
Oh, yes. So that is really, it's data. It's sitting underneath. There's a connector that is carrying the wattage information, things like that. And ultimately, the engineer will wire too when they're doing the circuiting. So that's all circuiting information.
Can we modify what it shows?
Most certainly can.
Okay.
Yeah. most
So
certainly.
the fixture type could be something that it shows, so that we
Absolutely.
don't have to tag
Um,
everything. I mean, I know that you have to tag it in order for it to show up on a sheet, but at least if we click on it, we can see it without.
yeah, it's interesting. You can actually, without having anything selected, you can hover over it.
Oh, but it doesn't tell us
Doesn't tell you the
the
type.
type.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
But what if we had it named that one?
If you had it named that way. So select that light fixture and type CO. It's for copy. CO. Left click in the center, more or less. That's to set the base point for a copy. And then left click to end it. What's
No, I think I know what you can
you got it?
do. The distance.
Oh yeah. So yeah, you can type in a distance right now if you wanted to. Revit thinks in feet, not inches. Okay, so if I type right now, if I type 5, it's going to do 5 feet. If I do 5 and enter, it'll do 5 feet. If I want 5 inches, I'd type 5 and then the inch symbol, then
So you
enter.
don't have to type the foot symbol.
No, it defaults. So I'm just going to hit 5 and hit enter, and it copies down a version. Did anyone watch the schedule change at the same time as I was doing that? Yep. Okay, let's go back to our schedule, and that where I have the type mark, I'm going to change that to be an F3. Enter. There we go. It just changed all of them in one shot. Okay. What's cool too is you can select a fixture in your plan. Okay. Go over to your properties bar, and you can change by clicking on, there's a top drop down on the top of the properties bar. Let's change that to being another type quickly. I'm going to change this to being a cylindrical pendant.
If I have a schedule open next to it, I can change, add fixtures there
You got it.
instead of going into type.
You got it.
Editor.
Yep. Yeah, it's that nice thing about being bi-directional. Either doing it from the schedule or the long takes so long.
Right. You can just.
Also, if you have it, if you look at it, it'll also highlight red what that type is,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
which I just found out.
Yes. Oh, and say that one more time.
So, I have 2 types in. If you click on one of them, it'll highlight
It'll
red what
highlight
that
all of
type
those.
Yeah.
is.
Oh, nice.
So,
The other interesting thing, hover over, say, click in your schedule over one of your types. Right click. That's not giving it to me. Top of the screen, hit delete. So if I'm hovering right here, hovering over my type mark, I can right click and hit delete rows. Watch this. Watch the lighting fixtures here. Delete rows. It deleted geometry. Okay, so you have to be cautious of that. You can actually control your lighting fixtures from this place. And if you want to delete them, let's say all of a sudden you're taking all of a sudden type out. You just got you engineered. You know? Yeah.
It's $1 million.
But I will say what I have used before, and it is helpful, that a lot of times on projects we do that. We, in our mind, said, well, this last meeting we deleted all F5s, and our team goes through and we do that, but there's still F5 shown on the floor plan
Yep.
of the ground level, and we just missed it. This at least tells us whether or not we still have something in there somewhere.
You got it.
So,
Do it in one shot, you clean the whole thing up.
So basically, the schedule, it's just data. So
Got it.
we can sort this however we want. So we could even
Got it.
sort it by level, by room.
You got it. You got it. Yeah.
You're only if the room did it.
Question,
Yeah.
while we're talking about
Only the room
copying
is there.
fixtures, in there, it made a comment saying that you can copy fixtures.
Nah, you know, that's funny. What to make similar?
Make similar would be like making a new fixture.
Yeah. It's interesting. You can copy from floor to floor to floor very easily.
That's how I thought in that.
Thanks for it's kind of not really. There's an easier way.
Okay.
There is you could make similar, but it would demand redrawing each fixture location. Rather than if it's like a typical floor plan, you're just copying it up. There's an easier way. Yeah.
I think
Mm-hmm.
the tags are visible and you don't want to copy.
That's correct.
And is that, can you
actually, I did that a lot.
Yeah. Well, you can grab both at the same time, and you can copy them around. So I'm just going to go to my annotate and tag by category. Take a leader off. Sorry, we need to customize this. There we go. So there's a tag on your F3. You can, and there's no reason not to, select both. Hit CO. And up here, by the way, if you want to copy multiple, everyone, it's a weird little checkbox at the top. Select the base point and start copying them around. There's no problem with that, of selecting the fixture and the tag at the same time. And it just occurred to me, your create similar thing. If you're in a floor plan and you don't want to have to go seek out that light fixture either in this really cumbersome family tree or finding it over here, you can just select that fixture, right click, and hit create similar. That may be what the book was talking about. You can hit create similar and just on the fly, if you already have one of it in your project, you just say, okay. You don't have to go seek it out here or seek it out in that
Well,
big
when
drop
you
down.
create similar, say that fixture type F3, is it going to make it an F3,
Yes.
or is it going to make it a different fixture type?
Same F3. It's going to say, okay, you want to, rather than having to hit copy and
Right.
copy it around, you can just say, oh, I just want to create similar.
Okay.
On a side note, I'm loving where the tags go, by the way.
Yeah?
Kind of on top of the fixture.
Cool.
Great
Cool.
start.
Awesome.
We got about 8 minutes more for this kind of session for stuff that we wanted to
Excellent.
cover, so.
Okay. Let's do, I want to get through this last bit here for views. VG, we didn't get into the ribbons quite as much as I would like to, but ribbons, are they semi-familiar to everyone? We'll get into where the tools reside on the ribbons here in a little bit, just in how we're using it. But more so views, because views are just absolutely fundamental to the way that Revit's working. You know, you're slicing up this prototype, and you're looking at it different ways. You have to filter out what you want to see in a view and what you don't want to see in a view. Let's go into our project browser. That level 1 lighting plan that we have open, I want you to right click on that and hit duplicate. And there's a duplicate flyout. We're going to hit duplicate with detailing. And do a window tile. Okay, you just made a copy of that view. It's independent now. And it has its own view controls. Okay, everything, you can change it. Now, let's go to those plans. I'm going to select one of my lighting fixtures and the tag. And look, as I move it, it of course is moving in the other view. Because Revit is looking at the same object, it's just in a different view. Okay? In one of those plan views, I want you to type VG. This is, I keep using these biological terms, the central nervous system for a view's control of how things are seen in a model. Okay, remember let's talk about model categories. How do you slice up the built world into categories? You know, we have columns, we have floors, we have furniture, we have lights, we have ducts. You have to have model categories, okay? And that's really what's shown here in this very, very, very basic VG interface. VG, and it has several tabs on it. It has model categories, annotation categories. We'll ignore the next two. It has filters, which we won't really use too much. When we start linking models in, you can also control which model categories show up in a linked model. That will show up here as well. We're not going to worry about that. In the Model Categories tab, let's scroll down to Lighting Fixtures. Okay? Highlight Lighting Fixtures. Go over to the third column or the fourth column from the right. See there's a halftone checkbox? Click that. Then we're going to hit OK. Look at that. They're half-toned in just that one view. Okay, this is a great example of maybe a working view where, yeah, you want something to be half-toned and not showing up as intensely, but it still resides in the project. Okay, it's still the same fixture, right, as you're seeing in the other views, but you're just looking at it a different way. You can just type VG. Yep. That's probably the easiest way from a plan. Oh, it's asking you to save quickly. There you go. Scroll down to lighting fixtures, and then there will be a, once you highlight that, and then go check the checkbox for half-toning. For that matter, you can make all the light fixtures red or blue. You can just control them in this one view. Isn't that cool? You're looking at the same, you can look at the same things multiple ways. It's especially helpful when we're in the plans, where we maybe have RCPs of varying heights. You know, that's helpful.
So you could, from a color perspective, we can create diagrams that show all of the ceilings that are 9 feet, all of the ceilings that are 10 feet. Those can have different colors. So from a visual perspective, I don't know why we present that to our clients, since usually they're the ones that dictate ceilings, but sure, exactly. I think that's.
You got it. Great usage. Yeah, that's a really good example. I've never heard of that being proposed. It's phenomenal usage for it. Yeah. Sometimes if you want to show, a lot more of our engineers it is for circuiting. They'll have some design views where they'll want to show all the light fixtures that are on the same circuit to be the same color.
Yeah,
Sure.
actually would be good for us to
Be good for typing.
save
Good, okay.
zones.
Okay, cool. Oh, so we should get into a little bit of circuiting and zones.
If we can go over how to do like a zoning control.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do,
Diagram.
like,
Okay.
zoning diagrams.
You got it. Yeah, you got it.
Where
Okay.
do you change the color?
So what you could do is you could do that through VG again.
In design.
VG. Go down to here are lighting fixtures. We half-toned it, right? But let's say instead, when you have it highlighted, you see how there are two little boxes for override? Two columns that are there. One are just the lines that represent like 2D lines, and the other one are patterns. If it had like a hatch on it or something, you change that. But hit override for the lines column, and we're going to change that color to, say, I'm going to do a blue. Sure. Filtering.
So the end is
It's
We
half
did,
tone. You can unhalf tone
There
it.
you go.
Yep, absolutely. There's VG. Let's do the hiding quickly. We temporary hide isolate. Click on a fixture. Okay, go down to your sunglasses and hit hide element. There it is. It's out of your way, maybe. You know, maybe you're trying to get a certain, you're doing lighting zones, control zones, and you want to isolate just one control zone at a time. You may go the opposite direction and say, okay, I'm selecting a fixture, sunglasses, isolate element. Okay? So, that's one way of doing it. This is temporary. If you close Revit and you reopen it, it will be restored. Okay? To get it back, you go to your sunglasses, reset temporary hide isolate. Reset temporary hide isolate.
What if you got
Oh,
can you get it back?
to
I hit apply with a turquoise.
okay.
It won't let me reset now.
Oh, did you were you selecting fixtures and right clicking on them and saying hide?
No.
No?
I just do what we went through. I click.
That's right. Yeah, that's good distinction. And that's actually something I haven't really used a whole lot of. That's another thing that clicked me. That hide isolate, or the apply hide isolate to view, I think is controlling, it's tying back into VG. It's saying, oh, you were meaning to hide all of your light fixtures permanently. My apologies, I hadn't actually, I've never really used that feature before. What had happened there, everyone, was is that this apply hide isolate to view, my guess is that that ties into VG, and you just turned off all light fixtures. But reset temporary hide isolate here, you click that, and they're all back. Okay? What I think could happen is if you go into VG, I can uncheck lighting fixtures here. Uncheck it. Look at that. They still reside in the project. They're still there. They're just being filtered out of this view. You know, you'll do the same. Sometimes you want to see furniture. Sometimes you don't. You're not going to pick up the furniture and hit delete. You're just going to say, out of this view, I don't want to see furniture. Which is, by the way, it's a model category right here, right? If you don't see the furniture, it's because you need to check show categories from all disciplines, which is going to include more architectural. Hit show categories from all disciplines, and then you will see things like furniture. Okay. We were talking about hiding versus filtering. Scale control is very, very easy. One of the nice things about Revit is that as you change the scale of a view, your annotation also changes. Everyone, it's so nice and easy, right? You no longer have to worry about the things that you did in AutoCAD. You click on that scale icon in the lower left of the view, and you can immediately change it. In my case, I'm going to change this to be 1/4 inch. Look at that. My symbology stays relatively the same, but my annotation changes automatically. This works for dimensions, absolutely everything throughout Revit. Revit's really good. I don't know why AutoCAD can't do this, but Revit's always thinking annotation is always in paper space mode. Text is all, if you want 3 32nd-inch tall aerial throughout the project, it always is showing 3 32nd-inch tall aerial, no matter what the scale. And it knows how to resize it. Scale control, cropping views. Remember I was talking about this crop region? Look at this, I can drag it over. Isolate just that one area. Okay. And then lastly, let's talk about multiplicity and independence versus dependency. Right now, these two floor plan views are completely independent of one another, right? Each one, you can make the fixtures blue in one and black in the other. But check this out. If I right-click on my level and lighting with furniture, in this case, and I'm going to hit duplicate view, and I'm going to let this flyout go to duplicate as dependent. Duplicate as dependent. Do this twice. Duplicate view. Duplicate as dependent. I'm going to close some of my other plan views just so I don't get mixed up here. No tile. This is the beginning of how you start to break up, say if you have a large floor plate building and you have to make smaller pieces of it with match lines, things like that. Notice how in the project browser, it made these two secondary views like sub-views of the parent view, okay? That's because the parent view is going to govern everything. If I change the scale in the parent view, I'm going to use familial terms here, parent and children relationships. This parent view, if I change the scale, it's going to change also in those child views. See that? But I can go into any one of these children views and crop it.
So would this be if you just had a plan that's too large to fit on one page?
You got it. Exactly right. Yep. And see, you actually have those sub views. Actually, you have a representation of those actually shown on the parent view, which is nice. Yeah, neat. No more, assembling XREFs for different pieces of a building and things like that. Now it's more so the other way of breaking it up into manageable pieces so that you don't kill your computer trying to process the whole thing. Let's do a quick Q&A for a few minutes. I know it's nearly, we're over just by, we're probably, yeah, we'll do it later.
No, we started later.
Oh, we started later, that's
We did,
right. We're
yeah,
back by a
we
half
started
hour.
later.
So, this is great. Any questions so far?
List, but
Do we have time to just go through the ribbons quickly and
sure. Yep.
just go through those
Yep.
very, very fast? So the ribbons, that's a common thing that's in a lot of software right now. It's driven by Microsoft, Adobe, Autodesk. Many of them are adhering to these standards. Your Home tab for Revit MEP contains your most basic tool set. These are the things that you're going to use on a day-to-day basis. Except as lighting designers, you're really only using a very, very small piece of this. And it's lighting fixtures, which are all the way to the right, probably on your screen. You'll have lighting fixtures here. And you can start drawing a lighting fixture by, if you clicked on this icon, it would pick your last fixture type that you had used, and it would allow you to start placing that fixture. The Home tab is really not all that incredibly useful. I find more so that, especially when I'm doing, if I'm doing lighting work, is that you're using the other tabs much, much more. The Insert tab, there are a few important things here. First is link Revit. Okay, link in Revit is basically externally referencing another Revit file in. I think most of everyone's nodding. You all have dealt with this tab before. Linking Revit. This is very different than importing. And I want to make a clear thing. Importing, it makes it native, whereas linking it keeps it external, like an external reference, and it can be updated. Linking CAD is like X-referencing in CAD. DWF markups, anybody using those? Oh, phenomenal tool. Really like the DWF markups. I'll show you how to utilize those. DWF is Autodesk's version of the PDF. But you can do these neat underlays. So if anybody is interested in trying to do electronic markups, maybe even between offices, things like that, you can make a DWF of a sheet, and then you can do a DWF underlay. It actually underlays all the markups right there on screen. It's really helpful. Yeah, it's great for sharing with other teams out there in the world too. As long as it works better for internally because you need the same sheet set. But decal, nice critical point cloud, nice critical manage links. That's like your XREF manager. That really is the place where you're going to control when you reload a file. Unfortunately, Revit doesn't automatically reload. You have to manually reload. For better or for worse. The reason is it's a memory issue. Revit files are just so hard on the computer, it can't be in constant reload. It would just fry the computer. Interestingly enough, there's a little line after manage links where we actually get into importing. Importing CAD, you should really never use this within a project. You don't want to bring CAD files directly in and make them native as much as possible. The reason being, it messes up your line types and it does a variety of things. It just kind of pollutes your drawings to a degree, pollutes the project. Importing GBXML, not sure if anyone's doing any energy analysis with GBXMLs. I don't think too many people are.
What is it?
It's a file that was Green Building Studio. Have you heard of this? Green Building Studio. Basically it was Autodesk's version of a before they bought Ecotech. It was for their energy analysis, things like that. It was entirely online that you would have this energy analysis done on a project. And it would create this file type called it, or you'd actually export a GBXML rather than import. You'd export a GBXML and then you'd upload to this website that would analyze the project. And I'm not so sure it really became the industry standard if they were hoping that it would. But it's a GB for Green Building Studio or something like that. Something that they had purchased since they're absorbing the world. If you want to insert an image, Revit is actually pretty good at handling images. Images use them not to a schedule, which is so disappointing, right?
Which is where I want my image to go.
Yeah, and you and everyone else. I do have a workaround. You can't schedule it, but you can do a legend. Where you have to draw your own lines and everything. You could, but it wouldn't necessarily. You wouldn't be able to track like lighting fixture types and counts within that, which is unfortunate.
So we'd still be better off
So you'd
exporting it.
yeah.
Legends are nice in terms of a view type because it can be used over and over and over in a project on as many sheets as you want. Revit won't let you utilize, once you drag a view onto a sheet, it can't be utilized anywhere else in the project because it's tracking where that view resides. But a legend can. If you have a general notes, I'm thinking more from a documentation standpoint from an architect or an MEP engineer. You know, they'd have a series of general notes potentially that they're using over and over on sheets. You'd make a legend out of that. But anyway, images are fairly well handled. in Revit. They can be on sheets, they can be in views. In the case of a nifty little thing that Michael actually had developed out there in LA is this HLB processes, which is a legend. You double click on that, it actually has some images built into it. This is, these are some processes to be vetted by the group, but best practices for sure. If you ever need to refer to it, this is a good place to do it, just for a process. But this has some images that are embedded. I'm going to close that view. We can revisit that at a later time. Also, off of the Insert tab, you have the Load Family. Okay? Let's say you've created a family type externally from your project and you want to load that family in. That's where you would do it, from the Insert tab. Let's jump to the next tab to the right. It's called the Annotate tab. This is your 2D world. Views can carry all annotation. Okay? So if you want annotation to show up in the same way in a number of different views, you have to copy that annotation from view to view to view. It's basically view specific. If you dimension a plan, you know, where your lighting fixtures are relative to walls, it's only going to show up in that one view. Okay? So if you want that annotation to show up multiple times, you have to manually copy that. Or if you're doing text, anything that would be showing up here is view specific, just to this one view. Okay? This is the thing of why we have a documentation view type versus just the design ones. In the design ones, you probably won't have any tags. You don't have to have any tags because it's never outputted. It's only there just for you to keep it straight in your head. It's in the documentation viewports and views that you have all of your annotation that you don't want it to ever move either. So they're kind of locked down and frozen.
But then that goes back to the concept of.
Yeah, in your design views you may want to have, you can very quickly, check this out. Selective fixture tag, right click, watch this. Select all instances visible in view, and I'm just going to hit delete just to clean them off quickly. You can select all of them in a project too, if you want to, and it's, for better or for worse, you could delete everything in a project very quickly. But look at your Annotate tab, and we're going to tag all. Tag all. Hit tag all, I'm going to go down to Lighting Fixture Tags.
How did you delete the fixture tag?
I selected one, right-clicked, and hit Select All Instances, Visible in View, and then hit Delete. So it's annotation, you're just deleting the tag. No consequence to the rest of the project. But you go to your Annotate tab, you hit Tag All, okay? And this, you scroll down to Lighting Fixture Tags, select it, and hit OK. And it tags them all. Now, I wish, Michael, I could do the offset, whether it's at 1/4 inch or at 1/8, but I can't. As you can see here, I changed my scale to 1/4.
Oh.
And so it's overlapping. So you will have to manually move these. Well, this is nice. You can right-click, select all instances, visible in view. And this is nice. In Revit, your arrow keys can move geometry. So watch this. I'll move them all at one time.
But is it only changing that view, or is it changing all views?
Changing this in this one view.
One view.
Yep.
But if you click in the entire project, it'll change all of them.
You got it. Yeah, so you can change them all at one time. So you're able to tag everything all at one time, which is very helpful. Off of your Annotate tab, variety of things. This is where you'll do dimensioning. Check this out. Aligned dimension. Shortcut for dimension is DI. DI. Let's dimension between two fixtures. Start our dimension command. In most things in Revit, you have to select the object first and then start the command. Dimensioning does not work that way. You start the dimension command, just like in AutoCAD. In this case, I'm just going to put a dimension on these two fixtures. Left click to start. Now look at this. See, it won't allow me to drop the dimension. I've created a dimension between these two light fixtures, but it's asking me to, if I want to do any more references. To stop the dimension, I left click in space, and that drops the dimension. Okay? Everyone get that? I'm going to hit escape here. Dimensions are so important because if you click on that fixture that's referenced by a dimension, look what happens to the dimension. It turns blue. Watch this. You can drive geometry with a dimension. See? Everyone able to do that? And in my case too, my fixtures are a little out of line with one another. Type AL. This is the alignment tool. Probably one of the neatest commands out there, AL. I'm going to first select the object that I want to align to. In this case, I'm going to align to this F3 that's up in my upper right. I'm going to highlight the horizontal bar in that fixture. Left click, and then I'm going to highlight the horizontal bar in the offending F3 over here in the left. Left click, and it locks those two, or aligns those two together. See that nifty little lock symbol there? You can lock that down so that they always move together. You hit lock. Look at this. You move one, it moves the other. And vice versa. Isn't that neat? So dimensions are really critical in Revit because you can drive your geometry. Let's say you're aligning to a ceiling grid. I use that align command all the time. Really a helpful tool.
So I'm not trying to change the dimension, and every time I try clicking the box,
Yeah.
bringing up a dimension text box.
Awesome. This is the text override. This is I think an AutoCAD thing. We want to, for some reason, click on the dimension to change the objects. It's the other way around. You select the objects that are being referenced, and then the dimension highlights. Here's the thing, Robin, with that is think if you overrode that dimension, it wouldn't know, which object you wanted to move.
Right.
Is that interesting? But that is how you override a dimension if you want to. Or if you want to add a prefix or a suffix, is you double click on that dimension.
Now, what if two fixtures are aligned already,
Okay.
but we didn't touch the lock thing to keep them always aligned? Can we touch the line again and then
You can.
lock the two fixtures?
You can. Yep. Exactly. Yep. Use the locking sparingly.
But like, for instance, like my fixtures are currently 5 feet 4 inches on center, and I want to move both of them so that they're 6 feet on center. I can lock.
You can. Exactly right. Exactly right. So that's another thing. This dimension here, you can click on that dimension, and that also has a lock functionality on it. So you can always maintain a spacing of 14 feet if you wanted to. Pretty helpful.
off one and I lock another.
Yeah, and that actually happened just there to me right now. Is that I was about ready to move a fixture here. MV is your move command. Drop for a base point, and I got an error message down there in the lower right saying, you're trying to move something that's currently locked. That's a good point. That's the one downside. You really would hope that the two objects would move together. But yeah, in general, yeah. Actually, if they are locked to one another, you can. But if you've used a dimension to lock them together, they won't move together. So in the case where I use this 14-foot dimension, here I can unlock this too at a later time. If I've used the dimension to lock two things together, they won't maintain that relationship. You'll just get an error if you try to. However, if you lock the two objects together, then you're good.
Well, I think we're making great progress, and I don't want to stifle that. I would like to try and take 10 minutes really quickly, just for people to catch their breath, go to the bathroom, all those good things. I know that I should probably call in West Coast. But I do want to try and get back here as quickly as possible because I think that the next portion where we actually talk about starting a project is probably our most critical one. So I want to make sure that we have ample time for that. And we can certainly touch on more of these ribbon and things like that.
So it'll happen naturally, I'm sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think if we can kind of reconvene in 10 minutes, a little after 3:30, 3:35, that'd be.
Sounds good.
Be good?
Are we pace? This is really fast. Is pace okay?
I think it's great. I mean, I think we are kind of jumping to things just because it's all intertwined.
Cool.
But I think it's certainly exciting to see a lot of the stuff that we can do.
Cool. It's funny. A lot of these things, yeah, you don't know that the tool is out there.
Yeah.
To use it. So great. Do the same here on the Adobe